Hello, my name is Rebecca, and welcome to my neutral knitwear podcast series, Knit and Chat, where I get to talk about all things neutral and all things knit, ranging from past projects, current projects, works in progress, and overall knit inspirations. But before I begin, feel free to grab your favorite coffee, tea, and or beverage, and of course, your knitting needles. With that being said, today I am drinking a latte macchiato, which is my go-to drink when it comes to starting off any knitting project. Well, before I really dig into the substance of this video, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Rebecca. I was born and raised in the Southern Tier region of New York. I'm 31 years old. I am a wife, a mother of twins, and I'm a history doctoral student. I am also an avid knitter and a knitting enthusiast. My knitting journey really didn't begin until I was pregnant with my twins, but kind of going back a little bit further, my first encounter with knitting began in high school when I was in algebra class. A fellow friend and classmate was knitting next to me, and she kind of showed me the ropes. She showed me how to cast on and how to do the basic garter stitch. And I was so mesmerized by this process. At the time, I also was a crocheter. Of course, I never made any really lofty projects or intricate projects. I just knew the basic chain stitch. And I could make a doily and scarves. But yeah, going back to that first encounter, I went home and immediately, begged my dad to take me to a local craft store where I could buy a knitting kit, which I was basically, spending the rest of the next few days and weeks on learning how to knit, casting on, and doing the garter stitch. My project that I was working on then was like this blue scarf, which never really made it to being completed, but it was really wonky, and I think that's where I got discouraged at the time. Nevertheless, it was a good segue into getting my feet wet. Unfortunately, I never picked up the craft until later on in life, until I was studying abroad in Heidelberg, Germany, where I was at a friend's house, and she was wearing this beautiful cobalt blue sweater, and I just complimented her on it. And she almost answered intuitively, yeah, I made this. And my jaw literally dropped to the floor because I was so mesmerized by the craftsmanship and how it didn't look like it was handmade. I think most of my previous conceptions when it came to hand knitted items was that they were really scratchy. They were made in these really bright and kind of eye-catching neon colors that weren't in my particular taste aesthetically pleasing, and didn't really look something that I would want to wear and incorporate into my wardrobe. So I was really surprised that my friend had made this item with her own hands, and it looked something that I myself could wear. So kind of moving on along those lines, she really kind of piqued my interest into not only the craft itself, but making this really great point that knitting should be not just a craft, but it should be used as something to be therapeutic and a really great release. Again, I was in grad school, a lot of assignments that I had to do, and the stress of just, dealing with that can be really overwhelming. So having that tip was really eye-opening and really helpful then. When I came back to the United States, I bought another kind of craft kit, and I was really determined to finish a project. So I practiced. I went on YouTube and I looked up various tutorials. I bought a few books and I practiced various designs. Because when I initially started learning to knit, I never learned how to purl. So I was kind of limited in my knitting abilities or my knitting toolkit abilities and what I could do. So when I finally mastered those skills later on in my kind of second phase of knitting in grad school, I was really happy that I could make something, and that was a pom-pom scarf. This is really cute kind of garter stitch with like these pom-poms at the end that I sewed on. It was really cool to make, and I made one for myself, I made one for my mom, and it was a fun project, and it really resonated with me that I could make something with my own hands and I could wear it, and it looked fashionable and looked really great and cool. So kind of after I graduated with my master's in history, I came to Germany. Fast forward, getting married, being pregnant. I am pregnant in the midst of a COVID pandemic. I have a lot of downtime, and I thought, what's not a great time to really knit and try to make some knitted infant wear, baby wear for the twins I'm expecting. And so it was then and there that I really started to look up patterns on Ravelry and the internet, and I didn't really have the wherewithal or the skills to really dig into a lot of those projects. I think I practiced with this striped raglan. I think it was pieced together. It wasn't raglan. This striped baby sweater, and it came out okay. But I really had a lot of trouble with it, and I struggled with it immensely. And I was thinking, if this is, how my knitting is going to look like, I might as well, give up. It wasn't until I went on Etsy and I found a designer who made these popcorn sweaters, which I absolutely fell in love with. Or they're also known as bobble sweaters. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to make them for the twins. And I just was mesmerized by how different it looked and how kind of funky it looked. But it was also, in these really muted, soft beige colors that was being showcased on the Etsy site. Unfortunately, the designer is no longer on Etsy Marketplace, but I bought the pattern and I was able to make this popcorn sweater. That being said, I had many renditions when I was making the sweater. Trial and error, learning how to increase, left-leaning increase, right-leaning increase. It was a lot. As someone who had no previous knowledge of how to do those things, and I just spent a lot of time watching YouTube tutorials. But I made it through, and I even talked to the designer and the next steps of where I was stuck, and she was really helpful in answering my questions, which I found really nice. I found it to be like amazing that, when you're in the midst of a pattern, that you can contact the designer and they can, help you. So yeah, that is my long-winded knitting journey, which is, I kind of see it in 3 phases. It's not, this linear kind of journey, but it kind of ebbed and flowed. I'm not the person who picked up the knitting needles and was like love at first sight. It was more of like a process. I grew into it and I came to appreciate it and still come to appreciate it more and more every single day. I think that's the beauty about knitting, is that you can kind of grow into it. You can start off with something small and you can challenge yourself to, and even push yourself to like new heights. And that's what I really treasure about the knitting process, amongst the various other aspects of knitting, holding the yarn, picking out the yarn or fibers, and this rhythmic movement of the needles in your hands, the tension, the very fact that you have to have the right balance between not too tight and not too loose. In one of my favorite books that I had read, The Power of Knitting, by author and scholar Loretta Napoleoni, she writes about her first experience of knitting, and that, she's saying all knitting is choreography. And I thought that was really like, a great way to understand the knitting process. That, one of the first things new knitters learn when they're knitting is how to hold the knitting needles and like how to get the right tension. I'm no in way or shape or form a knitting expert, so I don't want to give this false kind of picture that I'm, an expert and I know everything. I do a lot of things that many people wouldn't do. I don't gauge swatch, or if I do it kind of as an afterthought. It's not like a main focus. I don't know. I try not to overthink too much when it comes to knitting. I try to enjoy the process. Yes, there are times when I look at speed and kind of challenge myself as a way as like, oh yeah, I'm getting better at the speed of knitting. But there's that fine line between being, proud of being able to finish a project within a certain time period, and then kind of overdoing it where you're just focusing on pumping things out like a machine. And I think if you're in that mindset, my personal kind of take is that you kind of miss the big picture of what this craft can really bring, and that, the slowness and the beauty of kind of knitting and purling and kind of enjoying the moment. So that is that aspect of my knitting history and journey and kind of reflections. I'm currently working on this Petite Knit Sunday Sweater for my sister. I had made a similar one for myself in this taupe color, and I'll kind of hold it up. This taupe color, as well as the same color in this beige color that I'm knitting for my sister. I really like them. I like them a lot. And it's not only because they're my go-to sweaters. I just think they look like many of Petite Knit's designs are very elegant and timeless. And what's not to like? I think I understand the critique sometimes, and why certain people may seem that they don't understand why everyone is obsessed with Petite Knit, but I think in my personal kind of take, I fell in love with knitting items for myself because I saw the pictures of the Sunday sweater and I could really envision myself in knitting those items for myself to wear. So that's why I was really excited to kind of jump right in and knit the chunky sweater, Sunday sweater, and later the Mohair sweater and other various, projects. Again, by no means am I, an expert. I make a lot of mistakes, and I think that's also okay. But I just like the fact that I can challenge myself in this knitting journey and process to, be better and grow. Yeah, in that time I have been working on the ribbing of this sweater. What I really love about this Petite Knit sweater is this kind of, I've heard it being described by other YouTubers as like a sunshine, a ray of sunshine, and I think that's really fitting because it kind of reminds me of, the sun rays. It's beautiful and it's elegant. Again, it's so soft and it keeps me warm in the fall and winter months, and I find myself always reaching for these sweaters. I think I'll take a pause and I'll show you some of my current works in progress. Beginning with the one that I am not entirely excited about, but I'm still eager to finish it because I enjoy this popcorn sweater, as I mentioned before, because of the sentimental reasons that it has, it being like the first sweaters that I made for my twins. I also enjoy the popcorn sweater because it's so unique in how it looks, that it has these baubles on it, or popcorn. I haven't gotten too far along. It starts off, as a raglan sweater, and I have it in this really cool merino wool Earl Grey color. That's how I kind of describe it, but it's like a bluish, grayish color, and I just love it. Again, I'm really kind of bummed that the designer is no longer an Etsy marketplace, but I'm happy that I have the pattern to at least go back to and reference it when I want to make more finished projects. The second project that I am working on is, Petite Knit's Jenny sweater. And I was running out of cable needles. So the needles that I have for this project are really jumbled and, wonky in that sense, which made it really difficult to keep the stitches on the cable needles and to move them along seamlessly. I'm having a little bit more fun working on this project now that it's a few more centimeters in. I think when it was just barely getting started, it was very difficult for me to kind of move the stitches around the needle, and it just wasn't as fun and enjoyable. I will say this, I'm very excited to start the smock part of this sweater because I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's one of those designs that I saw from Petite Knit that I was mesmerized. I wanted to have it in my wardrobe. I couldn't wait to wear it, and I think that's what keeps me always going back to Petite Knit. I find her designs to be so I don't want to say simple, but in terms of plain, but they're simple in terms of this everyday wear that you can incorporate without in your wardrobe without feeling like you're overdone. And that's what I enjoy. And I like having that option rather than a lot of the cabled or lacework designs, where I also feel that wearing that sweater is more noticeable when I wear that it kind of is more noticed rather than a sweater where I can kind of blend in. With that being said, I'll start on my third project, which I cast on about 2 nights ago. And that is another Petite Knit whip. And it is the holiday pullover in this camel color. So the past projects were in, of course, yarn substitutions. The Petite Knit pattern often it calls for Mohair, which is alpaca mixture. I don't personally like Mohair due to the fact that I have a bit sensitive skin and I don't really like the feel of the Mohair. I find it to be beautiful. I find it to be really plush, and I even went to an alpaca farm. Fun fact, there's one in the city, near the city where I live here. It was an amazing experience. We got to go on like this alpaca trail and pet the alpacas, learn about the history of where they're from and the founding of this alpaca farm. It was such a treat. I would recommend anyone who has the chance or the opportunity, who lives near like an alpaca farm, to definitely do it. It was definitely a worthwhile experience. But going back to this final, what is this? The 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth whip. It's in this camel color, and I've made a similar kind of pullover, a holiday pullover, and I think it was the Stockholm pullover. I'm not really sure if I'm getting the name right, from Petite Knit. Again, very easily constructed, and it didn't take me a whole long to figure out how to get the pattern right and to figure it out. So that's another bonus about working through her patterns, which makes it very easy to use and user-friendly. And I think her designs is, I keep gushing over Petite Knit because for me it's more of that my personal experience of being intimidated by other patterns that weren't really well written and feeling really discouraged. And so this was the pattern that clicked for me, where I learned so much and I was able to kind of get better at some of the things that I was struggling with like gauge, or with picking up stitches, so inserting the needle in between the stitches rather than just, anywhere along the border. So that's what I really enjoy about that designer. It's not to say that I'm more than open to discovering more knitwear designers who carry similar kind of neutral, muted, and minimal designs. That's kind of where my style gravitates towards. But it's something that, again, it's a preference, a personal preference. So that is about my 4 whips. That sums it up. I think I'm pretty much set. I'll close this video with, thank you for those of you who stayed around to watch. I'm happy that you made it to the end. This is my first podcast, and I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and happy knitting, and until next time.